Hello, everyone. Alistair Gold here. Strange week. Very strange week. We sit here talking about 3 games, 7 goals, 6 points. Probably beforehand, had you looked at the 3 fixtures, all away games, you maybe would have taken 6 points. Yet, I think the sequence of it, the sequence of events, the different kind of matches, the very different feelings in them, and of course, a certain Antonio Conte's rather emotional words, it's kind of made it an odd week. And obviously, kind of bolting on the 2 home defeats as well. Knackering week. I feel like I've been all around England. I've been to, obviously, up to Manchester, coming back to home, then going back up to Burnley again, in which we were treated to, what did we get? We got wind, rain, hail, woke up to snow the next morning because I stayed over. And then Leeds was freezing. It was so cold. Clearly, I couldn't have been a member of the was it the Night's Watch on the White Wall. I think I might have found it a bit chilly up north, but yeah. So we're through it. We're through a very strange week. A lot of things happened. You can see I kind of really don't even know which kind of. I know some people judge my mood on the opening to the video, but it's such a weird week because I think if I'd done this straight after Burnley, it would have been a real kind of one. But obviously there were some good things that happened yesterday up in Leeds. And obviously Conte, once you take a little bit of his post-match emotion out of him, and we'll talk about that because I've asked him a couple of questions based on all of that and got some really good answers. And we'll kind of dissect slightly the way he said. I don't want to linger on it too much. It's a little bit old news now. So I'm going to talk more about the Leeds game and the things he said after that. A bit more story time with Alistair. But yeah, so yesterday, Elland Road. Do you know what? I haven't been to Elland Road since I was 15 years old. My brother took me to the FA Cup semi-final against Everton. Rubbish stay, as it was. I think they lost, was it 4-1? I think Amakachi scored a couple. I think I remember Klinsmann scoring. We got kind of through his work. He got a really nice day out package thing where we were having dinner, listening to Tommy Docherty, I think it was as well, having one of those dinner time talks, whatever I can't remember the actual expression for it. And we actually got to fly up. We were meant to fly back, but completely missed the coach to get back to the airport and ended up hiking a lift, as it were, on a coach all the way back home with some a big old coach of disappointed Spurs fans, and they dropped us off kind of near home. So what it were, terrible match, terrible performance, but I kind of remember it in a nice way because it was my older brother taking me to a football game. So it was quite nice to go back to Elland Road. Although I hasten to add, nothing appears to have changed. It really is an old school stadium. And when I mean old school, I mean old school. There's a lot of it that's, I'm sure they want to do a lot of work on it, and I'm sure there's all work that they're planning to be done, but it is very much, I don't think anything had changed since when I was 15, and, that's a million years ago now, or at least it feels like it. So, yeah. So, obviously, Leeds went into the game 6-0, with a 6-0 defeat of Liverpool. Spurs went into it with the Burnley match, which was pretty poor. I mean, just in very quick summary, Burnley was exactly what you'd expect from a Burnley game. Honestly, I looked out at the pitch at one point and the rain it was like tornadoes of rain going around the pitch. It was everything that Burnley know how to play in, and how, the likes of Bentancur and Kulusevski were probably like, bloody hell, what is this? Kind of thing. It was, man. Obviously, they had Weghorst up front, who did everything you'd expect him to do. He was very good as a target man. And shock horror, they won from a set piece. I wouldn't say Spurs didn't battle. Conte's kind of, we'll talk about that. I don't know if it's in the quotes I'm going to read out to you, but he did kind of later say that he didn't feel that they battled properly at Burnley. I kind of felt they did. I just felt they didn't have any quality. And that was the key thing that did it. It was the same 11 that obviously was so good against Man City. And they were really, really just blunt against Burnley, all of them. So it just was a complete game to forget. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Conte's comments on. I'm just going to do a little kind of thing I wanted to say about the Leeds game in that there's this expression, you're not a Tottenham fan, probably, if you haven't heard of the expression Dr. Tottenham. So what Dr. Tottenham is, sorry, that's harsh. Not a Tottenham fan. It may be that, maybe some people from different parts of the world haven't heard of this term. But Dr. Tottenham is what a large majority of Spurs fans refer to the fact that if a team is struggling, an opponent, they come into a game in poor form, let's say they haven't scored an away goal or something, or they haven't some kind of stat that they haven't managed to do, Dr. Tottenham will cure their ills. They will allow them to do those things. They will make them better. And I think everyone kind of expected that was what was going to happen to Ellen Road, probably with a bit of the pessimism that naturally comes from the Burnley game. However, it was Dr. Leeds were there in attendance waiting on the day, and thank goodness for Tottenham. Not so good for Marcelo Bielsa, who now finds himself unfortunately out of a job. But Leeds just played into every strength that Tottenham had. I've seen them play very open football. We've seen it against Tottenham in the past, but this current Leeds is just ridiculous. It was 4-0 to Spurs on the day. It could have been something like 8-3. Leeds are so gung-ho. And the defending, the crowd were just getting on their backs so much. Some of the passing was they just gave it away to Tottenham and just invited pressure on themselves. And it was, like I say, exactly what Tottenham needed. It was like, and that's not to say Tottenham played badly or they were lucky or anything. Tottenham did do some really good things as well. But my goodness, they were the most generous hosts ever, Leeds. They really were. They were just handing them the ball in such dangerous situations and leaving these spaces, which, we're going to talk about the wing-backs. The wing-backs loved it. It was exactly what they needed as well. And Harry Kane, who we're going to definitely talk about, was just unplayable. Absolutely unplayable. Spurs had 11 shots on target. 11. That's like, and some of those were kind of poor shots. Had they been better shots, that scoreline could have been ridiculous. Harry Kane could have had about 4 assists on the day. He was so good. And I think the biggest thing that we saw from Tottenham was that the players did raise their game. When you go to Leeds or play against Leeds, they're going to bring high energy. They're going to fight in every duel. That's what they do. And you have to match them. And to be fair to Spurs, on the whole, they did. Look, I know I've seen some people say, the midfielders overrun, all this sort of stuff. It's like, no, what happens is Leeds literally push their whole team almost forward to attack on you. So naturally, they're going to be a weight in numbers. The key is to try and defend that and then break, because in behind there's going to be so much space left by them. So naturally, you're going to be outnumbered at times in midfield. I don't think that's a tactical thing. Any team can play 0-0-11 as their formation, and you are at times going to be overnumbering defence or midfield. But that's not to say they played 0-0-11. They didn't, but it was so attacking. There was very little thought of kind of holding back on anything, and that's ultimately, I think, worked for them. They've had injuries as well, of course they have, but ultimately just couldn't turn it around. And it was a shame to see any manager go. But yeah, Conte's outburst in the week, it really had been, the thrust of it was to try to get his players to react. And they did. You saw that. After the win on Saturday, he said, what did he say the expression? He said, I'd asked them questions and they answered. I'll tell you what, I've got a quote here. Let's see it. Today we played a really good game. Good performance, good football. What I wanted to see today was the right spirit, the right character, the right desire to fight, to win the ball, win duels against a team that in this situation are masters. They go and press a lot. They have duels in every area, every zone of the pitch. Today I asked this of my players. I wanted to see answers, not only about football aspects, I wanted to see improvements in this aspect, which in my opinion is very important. Usually my teams are strong, not only on the pitch to play football, they're strong mentally, strong in their desire, their spirit. The opponent who has to play against us has to know this. We are working also in this aspect, and today I asked for this answer, especially after the Burnley defeat. We lost the game because the opponent showed more desire than us. Today I asked for big answers from my players, and they gave them to me. Which is fair enough. I think he's right. I think he's right in that. I do think a lot of those players who were very quiet at Turf Moor stepped up their game. They did. Look, if you want to know my opinion on his outburst, there's a slight calculation to it. There's a bit of emotion, probably a lot more emotion to it. There's a little bit of a calculated nature to it. If you haven't heard, I do, of course, if some of you might know, I do a weekly podcast with Rob Guesty, my colleague at work, called Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, and I have kind of had a bit of not a rant, but I went off for a little while about my thoughts on what Conte's week had been like and the things he'd said. I'm a big Antonio Conte fan. I am. I think he's an incredible coach, and I think he could do very wonderful things with Tottenham if, given the proper backing. However, this week I don't think we've seen the most most stable Antonio Conte, which is kind of ironic because that's what he wants from Tottenham. He's been up, he's been down, he's had the expression a lot of the time of a guy who just kind of feels he's made a mistake in coming to Tottenham, saying "I do" back in November. Just for example, like on Saturday after the Man City match, he was telling us all he had the best group of players he's ever worked with because of their desire and their will to improve. Tuesday, we had this lovely laughing Conte. It was the nicest press conference ever. He was in such good form. He was laughing away and joking with us all. That was the one where I asked him about Harry Kane. He's like joking that Harry Kane, I'd play me only if he had one leg. And he's like laughing away. And we had the comment about one of his former sporting directors that he knew, saying that you can make a mistake with your wife, but not with your striker or goalkeeper. He was chucking out the one-liners. Happy. He said, I come into training with a smile on my face every day. 24 hours later, and it was like his world had ended. They lost to Burnley in a classic Burnley game against a Burnley side who, let's be honest, as poor as Spurs were, Burnley have been on a good bit of form. They beat Brighton 3-0. I think they've kept 4 clean sheets out the last 6, 3 of those against like bigger top 6 kind of sides, as Sean Dyche said. So it wasn't the end of the world defeat that, it really could have been. But my goodness, after the game, he was so down. I need to talk to the club and, I need to meet with them. And he even floated the idea of potentially if he was the problem, he should leave. And it was like, I've told you this before, he needs time to decompress after a game. He does. He goes away and kind of shuts himself away for a little while. It takes a bit longer to come out for press conferences than other managers at Spurs have. And a lot of that is because he's calming down, whether it's on the high or whether he's on the low. But my goodness, he didn't even want to talk about the game. He didn't even, you'll notice, didn't even do a Spurs TV interview because he didn't want to talk about the game or what he would have said would really not have been broadcastable by the club themselves. But yeah, I asked him a question after that Burnley match. What was it? Oh, that was it. I asked him because he was talking about having not had the experience to have a situation like this because he's always been at top clubs who are ready to fight. And so I said to him, well, if you haven't had the experience, but obviously clearly he's a very good coach, like, what do you draw upon to fix this? And oh my goodness, I ignited this very long, almost depressed sounding version of events where, he was saying, maybe I'm not good enough. And it was all, I don't think he ever believes that. I don't think he believes that he isn't good enough. I don't think any manager does. They all have their egos and that's why they're at the top of the game. But my goodness, it was like, the Conte rollercoaster was properly going that week. And then, I asked him on Friday, the press conference ahead of the Leeds game. I said, look, you've asked in recent weeks for the patience of the fans. They need to be patient. They need to kind of stick with you for this process. Yet, are you worried that on Wednesday night, they saw you talking the way you were? And even on Friday, he'd said about, I am a man who needs results quickly. And I said, are you not losing your patience when that's what you're asking of others? And it's one of those questions where obviously you kind of like a bit like, ooh, you're going to have properly bite on this and have a right moan at me. But he actually didn't. He gave me a really good long answer. It was well thought through. And this is it. This is the calmer kind of Conte. And he said, like, look, after a match, after a defeat, you don't want to have dinner with me. I'm not the kind of guy that anyone should be around. I need to be alone. I absolutely hate losing and I'm a bad person to be around afterwards, after such a thing. And I get that. And I kind of asked him again, my follow-up question was something like, well, now you're like 2 days away from the defeat and you've got all your emotions in check, you're calm. do you still have that patience? And he was, it's kind of a mixed answer. I'll let you look back at the quotes from that day. He gave us a lot of good quotes in the actual press conference, and then more in the 10:30 section, which is for the written newspaper press. His answer kind of go both ways. It's like, I'm committed for now, but you get him to try and pin him down to say, will you still be here at the end of the season? And he just won't commit to it. To be fair, Poch used to do the same thing. Poch always felt it was disrespectful to claim that I'll still be here next season because he felt it was the club's right at any point to get rid of him, which they ultimately did. So he kind of felt it was disrespectful. I don't know whether that's why Conte's doing it. I just think Conte is very much seeing how the land lies, seeing what's going to happen these months ahead, where he feels the club's going. He admitted it. He said, this is not the Tottenham Hotspur I expected. He did. He was very clear in that he thought a bit of work would be needed to be done, but ultimately the team would be ready to fight soon. And obviously he's come in and realised, have you met Tottenham Hotspur? It's not that yet. And it needs more work. Is there a touch of naivety there? Perhaps. Has he looked at that and maybe we come back to the ego thing. Maybe he's looked at it and said, Tottenham Hotspur, they've got Harry Kane, they've got Son, they've got Romero in defence, they've got Hugo Lloris, World Cup winning captain at the back. I can sort this lot out. And he's gone and he's like, okay, there's a lot more to it than that. So maybe a touch of naivety, maybe a touch of ego. But yeah, he was very flip-floppy in his thing. It was very much like, I'm committed for now. And he added little caveats on the end. And it's all a challenge. It's a challenge to the players. That was what I was told. In the immediate aftermath of that Wednesday night, I was told by people around him that he's not... privately, he's not going to publicly criticise the players, but privately, he feels quite let down by some of the recent performances. Obviously, we're talking about Wolves and Southampton and then Burnley as well. And that this very much is a challenge to them. It's let's be honest, I'm your best chance of silverware. If you want me to leave and leave your stuff, that's what I'll do. So you better sort yourselves out. And it was kind of what it was. I'd still say there was more of a touch of emotion in it as well. I think there was a slight calculated nature, but it was... he said yesterday, and we're going to come to that, he talked about using soft and strong words. Which, yeah. But yeah, I didn't think it was the greatest week. You look to the person at the top, the person who is the face of your organisation. You look for a calm head, someone that's going to, inspire you through these choppy waters. And I just felt this week, maybe you didn't do that so much. That's not to say he kind of didn't say some really interesting things. But I just felt that, I get this. I know there's a line of logic, which I agree with to an extent that, people need to be told these things. And he was very clear. He said, I don't think Tottenham have ever experienced someone like me before. I tell them exactly how it is. And that fits in with what I've told you in the past, that I was told behind the scenes. He's been telling a lot of home truths to Daniel Levy and little awkward things that maybe Daniel Levy's never heard from other managers, and Conte just essentially spelling it out how it is. I think definitely those kind of things need to be said. But when it's a bit like this and you don't know which Conte you're going to get, and I do feel like it's going to grate on the fans eventually if he's constantly, every time they lose, they're hearing how bad their club is. Spurs fans know fully well what their club's like. They've had to live it every single minute of every day. So they know what needs to be done. And I just, I think Conte has to be slightly careful there that as good as he is and as much as support as he's got from the fans, if he keeps going down this, what's he going to say today kind of rollercoaster route, people will start to get a little bit annoyed by that. Saturday's Conte was, I suppose, content. I was trying to make that into a word. It makes probably more sense when you actually see it spelt out, Conte, NT, for anyone that was wondering what the hell I'm talking about. He was still a bit of a nut on the sideline, which is good. I don't think that's any problem. I think that, he got a yellow card himself for complaining about a challenge on Christian Romero. So that's fine. But afterwards, he was okay afterwards. He wasn't, he didn't go into any extremes either way. He wasn't ridiculously happy, Conte. He wasn't ridiculously down, Conte. he said, he kind of admitted that he didn't have any regrets over what he'd said in midweek. We probably weren't going to push on that again, but I think it was a Northern journalist who probably wasn't party to the press conference we'd had the day before. He kind of stoked it up a little bit again. Not in a bad way, just kind of went slightly over old ground. And yeah, so he said he didn't regret it. I had some of the quotes here I want to say. Oh yeah, it was talking about the soft and strong words. He said, "For sure I am a person that my demands are very high because when you want to be competitive, you want to win, your demands have to be very high to improve players in many aspects. Sometimes I use soft words, sometimes I use strong words, but with only one target to improve in many aspects. I think this group of players every day show me great commitment, but they know this is not enough. We have to continue to improve in many aspects. Today I've seen great desire, great compactness, great will to fight together in every zone of the pitch. This has to be a starting point for us and not only an episodic game." Yeah, and he's right. That is Spurs' biggest failing, their inconsistency. We know that. We've seen it this week. You can absolutely deserve to beat the champions in their own backyard, and then you go to Burnley and you get beaten 1-0 in a game where you've created very few chances, despite the fact you ripped Man City apart a few days ago. And look, they are different games. Tactically, it's a very different kind of match. I saw a lot of, sometimes you get these tactical masterclasses from people on Twitter, who one day will say, "Oh, you can't change a winning team. You need to pick exactly the same team," and then after the match will say, "Can't believe you picked the same 11 players. It's such a different game. It's playing Burnley in the wind and the rain." It's like, okay, we know what you said before. And to be honest, I'm guilty of it myself sometimes. Of course you are. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. But they need to change one win into multiple wins. They need to turn one clean sheet into multiple clean sheets. It's as much of a roller coaster as Conte brings. I suppose the players do exactly the same, and they're just not finding that consistency that a top team needs. But we'll come to that a little bit later. What I want to talk about positive stuff. The wing backs. Yay, the wing backs were in full cry. The wings backs. We know, look, the wing backs. Look, I've said this a million times. Antonio Conte's system relies on wing backs. It's a huge, crucial factor to making it work. The wing backs have to be your fittest players. They have to be making interceptions and tackles and defending in their own half, and in the next second springing forward and really being one of the main creative forces in your team. With that having been, let's be honest, pretty much an utter failure, the wing-back idea for Conte, because of the differing qualities of the wing-backs, let's say, different areas and different aspects. It just hasn't worked. And that's been a big old reasoning for a lot of things not working, I think, in his system. This was much better. I asked him after the game about the wing-backs at Elland Road, and you could just see the relief on his face. And he said, "For the first time, I've seen my mark about this system, to create with the wing-backs and the other wing-back. To create with the wing-back and the other wing-back to score. This is the mark of my system, my formation. This is the first time. It means the work we've done is starting to work." And it did. They were terrific. It was really nice to see, because there were two players that really needed that game. Ryan Sessegnon and Matt Doherty were both excellent. They were really, really good. Look, we have to add the caveat, of course, that Leeds did give them a hell of a lot of space to run into, but they ran into that space. And this was my biggest frustration with Ryan Sessegnon against Burnley. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm a big advocate of Ryan Sessegnon. I think at 21 years old, he's got a lot of potential. He just needs to start showing it. And my biggest problem against Burnley was he was so safe and unadventurous. Against City, he'd been tactically disciplined. It was more about that side of his game. I understand that. He couldn't really get himself left up the pitch too much. But against Burnley, there were lots of scenarios where he needed to go at his man, and he didn't. He would just stop, turn inside and pass. I don't know whether that's a hangover of the hamstring issues that maybe stop him from really kind of exploding with those runs. This is the kid that we saw against, for Fulham, absolutely tearing defences apart. The year they came up, he scored 16 goals, created 8 assists as well. Absolute phenomenon. I think it was only 16 or 17 when he did that as well. So to see him as this kind of safe pass inside, left-sided kind of wide man, it's a bit like, oh, that's not the Ryan Sessegnon Spurs bought. Oh, thank goodness. We saw the Ryan Sessegnon Spurs bought yesterday. He just the early minutes, I knew it was different because he was flying at their back line. He kept getting to the touchline and putting these low crosses in. They weren't getting to people, but they were causing problems. And then 10 minutes in, Conte got his dream wing-back scenario. Lovely ball from Harry Winks. Really nicely weighted pass into the run of Sessegnon. He got straight up, surged up to the edge of the box down the left, pinned it across, absolutely perfectly weighted ball into the middle. Matt Doherty arriving at the back. Well, it wasn't even the back. He was like in the centre of the area. Bang! Smashed it home. It was lovely. Start to finish, another really good goal. And yeah, that's what Ryan Sessegnon can do. And also that's what Matt Doherty can do. You know, Matt Doherty is a guy who was known at Wolves for his potency in arriving at the back as almost like an auxiliary striker, as it were. And that's his first goal for Tottenham since he arrived. What was it, summer of 2020? But no, so good for both of them. Sessegnon did more runs as well. There was one where Kane drifted the ball over the top and he volleyed it at the keeper. Had a couple more crosses into the box as well. It got a yellow card for a late challenge and again showed that good discipline to kind of not pick up another one. Yeah. I mean, I wonder whether that awful kind of naive red card he got against Mura out in Slovenia, maybe that's taught him a lesson, I guess, because I thought he might come off quite soon after the yellow card with Reguilon being on the bench, but he didn't. Conte kept him with him quite a while, and he did. He shows discipline. The only thing he did do that was a bit of a mess was Spurs, I think, had a corner. It was either corner or attacking free kick. I can't remember what it was. I think it was a corner. And Sessegnon just played a loose pass, which set Leeds on the break. And then we had that weird Hugo Lloris moment where Lloris did really well as like a sweeper keeper, came out, got to a loose ball, then cannoned it off Stuart Dallas. Dallas then ran away from him. Hugo Lloris turned and just like one of those, what are you doing moments, where he turned and tried to like kind of grab him with his hand on the leg. And we're talking about midway into the Tottenham half. It wasn't his own box. He would have gone. He would have been sent off. Thankfully for him, he missed it. Missed Dallas's ankle. But then, to be fair to Sessegnon, had sprinted back to the goal line. That held Dallas up slightly. And then Ben Davies came in with this incredible sliding block. It was so good. It was really, really good. But yeah, that was Sessegnon's one kind of fluff. Lloris, that's a little string of games. I wouldn't say he did too much wrong against Burnley. But it was definitely 3 out of 4 games where he's had a few mistakes, which is a shame because it's come after such a consistent period. And I think the fans are now going back to the, he's rubbish kind of thing. It's like, no, he's just on a little bit of a dip at the moment. All players go through them. He'll go back to being very consistent again soon. But yeah, so Sessegnon, that was really good for him. It was important. And the fact that, Conte picked him again, even though Reguilon was on the bench, I think it was a big show of confidence in him. Conte loves Sessegnon. He really does. He shares my views. He very much feels that he can be an important player for Spurs and City. Sorry, Spurs and City? Spurs and England in the years to come. But he has to believe in himself. I think we saw him believing in himself at Elland Road. It was great. And, Sergio Reguilon's back. Whether there's any little lingering after effects of COVID, I don't know. But he hasn't even appeared. Emerson came off the bench for Sessegnon late on yesterday. But either way, the fact that Sessegnon's getting his run of games is terrific for him. And he played very well. With Matt Doherty, as I say, that's everything that he was good at. I always feel there's been a touch of misfortune with Doherty. He was brought in as a terrific wing back. Let's not forget, Wolves over 2 seasons in the Premier League, it was only Trent Alexander-Arnold who created more chances from a right-sided defender than Matt Doherty did in those 2 years. He came in and we all knew what he was coming in for. The Spurs brought him to play as a right-back, which he hadn't played in like 10 years, other than for Ireland occasionally. So it was a bit like... So he came in then having to relearn an old position, Then he got Nuno back and was probably thinking, yeah, the man who made me, fantastic. And then it was a bit like, oh, he's not even playing as a wing-back, playing with wing-backs. Then Conte comes in, it's like, yay, wing-backs! And he's not really playing him, he's playing Emerson, who isn't really naturally suited to being a wing-back. And to be fair, then the flip side is, I think Doherty, when he has come in, hasn't smashed it. I think Harry Kane did an interview yesterday, even for Spurs TV, where he said that. And I think Doherty, to be fair, said it himself. He hasn't shown the levels he can. I think the only little kind of, you remember kind of fits and starts. So like when he came on against Leicester at the King Power a couple of weeks back, he did help change the game. He brought some positive momentum to it. Funnily enough, he also played very well against Leicester in the final game of the season. Clearly something about King Power that works for him. And he was really good yesterday. He had a lot of will, a lot of desire, defended well. Just really, it's just confidence it's not rocket science. Confidence makes such a difference to players. His little one touches and movement was so good. Again, I have to add the caveat that Leeds helped a lot, but it was a good thing. And he said after the game, this is where I like to play. This is my natural position. This is where I feel I'm best at. And again, like Sessegnon, if he maybe gets a little run now, this is why I kind of hope. We'll talk about it a bit later, but I hope he doesn't rotate too much for the Middlesbrough game, because I kind of feel like, especially in Sessegnon and Doherty, you're looking at two players that probably could really benefit from now taking this momentum with them. I was really pleased with Doherty. He was obviously scored that goal, which was really good. And then he almost returned the favour for Sessegnon later on. He played this really good kind of dangerous low ball across the box that Sessegnon just missed by about an inch. He couldn't slide in at the back post. He did this really awkward thing where he kind of jarred his knee and then hit the post, and it was like, oh God, as in hit the post with his leg, and it was like, no, not another injury for Sess, but he got up and eventually kind of ran it off, which was good. But and then Doherty linked up really well with Kulusevski for Kulusevski's goal, which was a lovely one, obviously, drifting inside and a few very weak Leeds challenges before he rifled it into the bottom corner at the near post. But yeah, that was a nice link up. So he got a goal and assist, Doherty, on the day. And yeah, he looked really good. And he's very popular. He's 30 years old now. He's kind of almost a decade older than the Sessegnon. He's very popular at Tottenham. A lot of close friends. Harry Kane's a big friend of his as well. I think they spend a lot of golfing time together as well. And I think everyone's just so happy for him. He even admitted afterwards, he's like, I didn't really know how to celebrate because I haven't scored in so long. But the Kulusevski partnership, I think, is going to be really interesting because we saw him have little flashes of a partnership building with Gareth Bale in the cup matches of European games under Mourinho. And I just feel like you saw with Kulusevski, there was something building there. There's quite a good little rapport going. Some nice little pass and moves, little 1-2s, and obviously for the goal itself. Yeah, keep an eye on that one. I wonder if Doherty gets a run now, and Kulusevski, we're going to talk about in a little moment, that could be a pairing that we see a lot more down that right-hand side that could cause a lot of problems for opponents. It really could. And Doherty brings something different that Emerson doesn't. Emerson has qualities. He's physically very strong and fast, and his defending on the whole is normally pretty good. But just as I said a million times, he's not a final third player. It's not really he's been part of his game. He's not your stereotypical Brazilian, really. And you even saw that Kane put him through for a late chance when just a little bit of composure and really should have put the ball away. But Meslier came out and... or Meisler? I think it's Meisler, isn't it? The Leeds goalkeeper, before I kill pronunciations of another person's name, came out and saved the ball at his feet quite comfortably, really. It didn't really look like he was ever going to score. And I felt a bit sorry for him because maybe slightly misguidedly he used an image of that moment on his Instagram and clearly got a lot of flack back and had to limit the replies to his Instagram post. I always think that's so sad when players have to do that because they're just getting abuse. Like I say, maybe don't use that photo. However, it doesn't really excuse some of the comments I saw underneath his post before he switched off the replies or limited them. But yeah, Doherty, the chance is there for him to take. It really is. He can make Emerson more the bench player. He can. But Dejan Kulusevski, Decky as he likes to be known, a very good performance again. I felt he was actually one of the brighter of the attacking players against Burnley as well. Obviously coming off the back of that terrific City performance. And yeah, yesterday he was excellent. He was really, really good. He's so dangerous when he cuts in on that left foot. It's, still not seeing too much from the right foot. I am told by the Swedish Spurs fans that he does have a very good right foot, but he obviously predominantly likes to cut in on that left, and it's a bit of a wand of a left foot, so I can understand why. It was a lovely finish, and no, he's built for the Premier League. I know people are disappointed that Brian Hill has gone out on loan, and me too, but Kulusevski is the actual embodiment of what Conte is saying about a player ready for the Premier League and proper scouting and recruitment, I think is what he's trying to say. Because he's big, he's strong, he wins a lot of battles, and with the confidence running through him, he's very good at kind of turning with the ball. He holds it up well when he receives it near the halfway line. He's very good at that, and he uses his strength well. And only 21, another him and Sessegnon, it's crazy. He said something. Conte said about him. Kulusevski is a player who's only 21 years old, and in these 4 games he could have scored in every game. I think he's showing that he's a fantastic player for the present, but also if he continues this way, he can become a really important player. He's strong physically, good technically, he has no fear of the opponent or the tackle. It's a good sign. With Harry and Son, also Lucas Moura and Bergwijn offensively were good, and I'm happy for this. Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true about the fear. He goes in for stuff. He doesn't mind if he gets knocked down. He's not one to lie on the floor and I'm not going to say play act, but he's not one to lie on the floor and feel sorry for himself. He really does get straight back up. As I say, he's tailor-made for the Premier League. He likes the battle. He was very good. But there was one player for me who was incredible, and that was Harry Kane. Or I'm going to call him Harry Kerrickson. Because I think I've said this before, but if there ever was an embodiment of this, it's like Harry Kane someone's put him into, if you ever watched The Fly, when Jeff Goldblum goes into the transporter machine looking to get to another pod on the other side of his apartment. And unfortunately, when he goes in, on one occasion, a little fly creeps in as well. So he ends up becoming amalgamated, him and this fly. He eventually transforms into this thing. I wonder whether that happened with Kane and Eriksen just before Eriksen went, because Kane, in recent, 18 months, 2 years, has slowly amalgamated into Harry Kerrickson. He was a guy that we knew could always pass the ball well. We saw it. We saw sometimes he'd take the ball, turn, hit a lovely crossfield ball. But obviously, something happened where he just decided, stuff this. I'm going to shoulder the responsibility of also being the playmaker in this team as well as the goal scorer. Obviously, last year won the Premier League Golden Boot and the Playmaker Award for the most assists. And, we saw it against Man City, but some of his play yesterday against Leeds, had he had a clone of himself, he would have had 4 assists, probably, because he just sprays the ball right beautifully. He just has this iron. And the way he hits the ball, obviously he got the assist for Son. And you just look at the way he cuts the ball. If you watch it back, it's not a normal pass. He just hits this pinpoint ball perfectly over the defender. Sonny chests it down really well and powers it past the keeper. But that ball is it's kind of quite ironic that one of Kane's heroes is Tom Brady, the now retired Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback. And the pass for Son yesterday almost felt like a quarterback throw. It kind of had this cutting, spiralling spin to it. It was beautiful. He played so many of those. He played, like I say, he played Sessegnon through. He played Emerson through. Played Son through a couple of times. I think he played Kulusevski in at one point as well. It's just getting that balance right for him between the the coming back into a deeper role to hit those passes, but also you need him in the box to finish because he's just an incredible finisher as well. His goal was vintage Kane. It really was. A lovely ball from Højbjerg, which I hope gets a lot more credit. It was beautiful chip ball into the box. And a bit, just you watch Kane, watch it come over his shoulder, and he just volleys it left-footed across the keeper and into the far post. It's beautiful. But to be able to do that and also be a creator, he's spraying the ball around like Pirlo, peak Pirlo at times. It's incredible. He's got to be up there really with one of the best passers and creative players in the Premier League. And this is the guy who is one of the best strikers in the Premier League in the world. His game is just incredible. And what I love to see now is that Harry Kane's fitness is now, it is peak fitness. He said it himself, he's fitter than he's ever been in his career, and that includes the potch years when he was just absolutely, drilled twice a day. I don't think, and I'll say this all the time, I don't think he was at his fittest last season at all. I felt he played very well. Mourinho got really the best out of him and Son, but I still don't think fitness-wise he was that great. There were times when you really saw him kind of flagging towards the end of matches, whereas now, it's no coincidence that he scores that late goal against City. It's no coincidence that he comes back and pings that terrific ball to Son in the final 5 minutes or so against Leeds. His fitness is terrific, and you're not only seeing him working around those areas. I think maybe that was the thing with Mourinho. A lot of his work would be kind of further up the pitch, whereas now you're also seeing him come back into his own half and doing a lot of things. And I've got some Conte quotes about him because he was raving about him. He said... Oh, actually, yeah, before I move on, obviously, that assist for Son was quite important. It was a record. 37 goal combinations now between the two in the Premier League. They went clear of Drogba and Lampard, which is a great achievement. It really is. It's terrific. So, yeah, fantastic achievement, really, for two top players now to have something that, it's going to be very hard for others to beat, I think. If you're not where a goal combination is, it's only one player setting up the other. So only goals that they have set up for each other, essentially, not goals that they have scored alone. But yeah, Conte said, Harry's performance today was incredible with the ball, but I want to underline without the ball. Many times I've seen him run and follow the defenders to tackle and win the ball. When you have your best player doing this on the pitch, isn't it a fantastic example for the other players? I've seen a great unity and solidity, not only in the football aspect, but also in the mental aspect. If we improve in this aspect, we can become a strong team. I want to be the coach of a strong team. In the past, the characteristic of my teams have always been difficult to play against, not only in the football aspect, but in the spirit and desire. I want my players to be warriors, and our opponent has to feel this. For this reason, sometimes I use soft words, sometimes I go strong with the environment, with the people that work with me. I'm demanding to myself a lot. For this reason, my demands to the others have to be the same. So yeah, it kind of it went from Kane back into his demanding ways. But yeah, Kane was brilliant. Absolutely phenomenal. He was my man of the match by a mile yesterday. And he was, again, a bit like he was against City. He's absolutely unplayable. I think we've got him back. I think we have Harry Kane back at his peak. But now the key is to meeting his and Conte's demands. It is, because I find it so frustrating when you look at the Premier League table, because Spurs are still there. They're still right up there in terms of those European spots. It's mad. They can lose 4 games out of 6 now, isn't it? Yet they're still right up there. I was recording this just before West Ham and Wolves are about to play, but at the moment, before that game takes place, Spurs are 7th in the table, and they finally got a positive goal difference. Woo! 3 goals. But you look at that, and if they were to win those games in hand, they would be, they'd be right up there. They'd be above Man United, who've got they're 5 points ahead of them, but have obviously played 2 more games. And Arsenal, obviously, the only ones that if they were to win their games in hand would sit above. Obviously, keep using the expression game in hand, which we know means very little ultimately because it's not points on the board. And as Tottenham have proved, they lost one of those games in hand to Burnley, one of the rescheduled game. But you can't help but look at it and look at those, especially the disappointing defeats. I think, even more so against Southampton and Wolves. Spurs win those 2 home games and they don't mess up at Burnley. Those 9 points, they're third. It's so annoying. It really is. And of course, I know it's all about what ifs and all that. But I think that's why Conte gets so frustrated, because they're kind of there, but they just let themselves down. And that's a ridiculous thing that they could still, they could still get there. And third place is kind of where Conte wants to be operating. He wants to, I think in his mind, that's where he felt Tottenham were going to be, and then he could just push them on a bit more for maybe title aspirations. Whereas Tottenham, they are 7th and they're looking to get into the top 4, which is not really what I think he had in his dreams of doing with Tottenham. He said more stuff about his... these are the quotes when, I said earlier that the Northern correspondent asked about his future again. He said, "My words were very clear, because I repeat, I am a coach that for me is not enough to play the game and to enjoy football, to come back to England, to enjoy playing in the best league in the world. I'm a coach who wants to enjoy football, but at the same time create something important to be competitive, to fight and win. I think I want this. My words are very clear, and there are many coaches that want only to enjoy, stay in England and play in this league and enjoy the environment. I want to match that, enjoying football and at the same time feel the possibility to be competitive and fight with my players. I think we're doing a great job in these 4 months because many, many situations have changed at the club, at the training ground, with the players, and that's what it is. Conte demands more. He wants more. And what happens in his final? Was it 13 games in the Premier League season? They're going to kind of define the next step, really, or at least the first step of what happens with Conte, because the second step really will be the summer, and it will be what the club can then do for him. Because I've kind of felt that this week, that all this talk about Conte walking out, if Conte were to walk out before the end of the season, I know of course there'd be people annoyed at the club, of course there would, but I kind of personally, if he were to walk out before the end of the season, I kind of feel that would reflect more on him, and I think it would show a lack of appetite for the fight. It would be quitting. I kind of feel. Whereas I think the other side is if he were to go in the summer, that's all about the club. Of course it is. That is very much, he doesn't feel that he's going to get what he wants in that summer in terms of transfers, in terms of backing, whatever. Two different scenarios for me. Leaves before the end of the season, very much I think that's Conte. I suppose slightly wussing out, just kind of not having the stomach for the fight and not at least finishing what he started this season, I guess. Summer, that's a different thing, and I can totally understand why the narrative would switch in the direction of Daniel Levy and the board and all of that. It's an interesting one because Conte's had a chat with Levy this week after the Burnley defeat, and it clearly has gone very well because Conte's heard whatever he wanted to hear. He talks glowingly of Daniel Levy. All the managers do seem to like Daniel Levy. For someone that is obviously quite criticised by Spurs fans, the managers all seem to quite like him. Obviously, that's not enough to build a successful football club, but you'll notice now that he's now gone from calling him the chairman to Daniel. That always happens at some point with a manager, although I don't think Mourinho did. I think he called him Mr. Levy all the time. But with Conte, he's now at the Daniel stage, which is interesting because if you see him talk about Fabio Paratici, he calls him Paratici, doesn't call him Fabio. Whether that's just an Italian thing, where maybe they call each other by surnames more often, I don't know. But I do know that, I think this kind of thought that he and Paratici are best bosom buddies from their time at Juventus isn't the case. I think there's a good working relationship there. I don't think they're, having dinner every night together, with a glass of Italian wine or anything. But the Levy stuff's quite interesting. Obviously, from what we can tell from what Conte said about the chat, there was a lot of flattery going on. There was no doubt Daniel Levy was saying, "Oh, Antonio, you're so wonderful," and all this sort of, "We love you." I don't think that's how Daniel Levy talks. Actually, he doesn't, because obviously we've heard him talk and he does not sound like that. But there will be a lot of flattery going on, which is, all managers want to hear how great they are, especially when they've just lost 5. Was it 5 out of 6? Oh no, 4 out of 5 at that point. But clearly, whatever's been said has given him some positive indications of what's to come this summer. Because otherwise, he would still be grumbling a lot. But Conte will have a little part to play as well in those funds. If they can do the unlikely at the moment because of their lack of consistency, but if they were able to get 4th place, which is still there, and yes, I know there's someone right now, probably many people going, "No, we're not going to get 4th place. What are you talking about?" And I get it, because their consistency is rubbish. And yes, they are, I'd say, an outsider for the top four. But if you were able to do it, to show that magnificent coaching ability he has, that brings a huge injection into what Spurs can spend in the summer. Conte could quite rightly say, well, they should spend that whatever. If they're serious and have ambition about trying to make this the club they wanted it to be by appointing me, they should spend that money on whatever. And I accept that. I totally accept that. And, he'll also be looking at this Tuesday against Middlesbrough, and he'll be looking at the FA Cup as something that, look, he wants to, of course, he wants to be the manager that can bring that second trophy in 21 years or whatever it is to Spurs. There'll be the competitive side of him as well that will want to do what even Mourinho couldn't in bringing silverware. Mourinho will probably quite rightly point to the fact that he was sacked 6 days before a cup final, as like, well, I didn't really have the chance. But, Conte will want to try and do that. If he can do that, that's a huge feather in his cap, and succeeding where so many people have failed before him. It's another trip up north. It is another trip up north. 5 out of 6 games have got trips up north. And, Leeds was sunny. Leeds was nice. It was just very cold. Burnley was a bit bleak. The weather was pretty awful. And Manchester actually was a bit of a wet drive as well. So hopefully, Middlesbrough is different. I'll be getting a train. I'll be staying over. I'll have the delights of Middlesbrough overnight. But yeah, Middlesbrough are going to be exactly what you'd expect. They beat Man United at Old Trafford. They're no pushovers whatsoever. I think they're 8th in the Championship. Home crowd behind them as well at Riverside. I like the Riverside. Went there obviously when they were in the Premier League when they played Spurs. It's a funny ground because it's quite not in the middle of nowhere, but it's kind of, I think, near like a docks area. So it's quite exposed to the wind. I remember it being quite windy there. But there's also quite good noise you get from the crowd as well there. So yeah, it'll be a good game. But they've got to get through it. They've got to get through it. And I'll be intrigued to see how much, if he does change up the side, what he does with it. Because, yeah, like I say, I'd like to see the wing-back stay the same, but I'd imagine there'll be certain players he wants to give minutes to. You've got the likes of Bergwijn, Reguilon, Lucas, who had a training ground knock on Friday, so he didn't travel up on Saturday. Very young bench. God, we had Alfie Devine was on there. Dane Scarlett, who came on and got some minutes, which was great towards the end. Brandon Austin was on there. Harvey White was on there. So 4 young academy products on the bench, which is good for the academy. Doesn't say too much probably about the squad depth. They've got 3-4 injuries to outfield players, and boom, that's that. You're having to draft in 4 academy players on the bench. Galini was still ill, so Austin was on the bench, and Tutala, Timothy Lotuala, who's only 19, young goalkeeper. Very exciting for him. In the last 2 games, he's been the 3rd goalkeeper, so that's massive experience for him. Of course, you've got Davinson Sanchez, Joe Rodon, he might want to give minutes to as well. But the flip side is the Everton game isn't until the Monday night the following weekend. So you've got 6 days for players to rest. So there may be a part of him that just thinks, well, maybe in this game I'll continue with the strongest team I'd want to put out. But I don't know. It's like the one trophy Spurs can still win. It's a tough one. It's a tough one, but personally, I think you probably would stick with a lot of those players. But, they need to build momentum. That's it. We don't want to see Conte unhappy again. Conte like that this week. I don't think... I think even the press... It's good for us, of course, for the media. The sound bites are great, and we can write all these interesting words and copy and all that. But even with us, it's a bit like, what Conte we're going to get today? And when they lose, he's, as he said, told me, he's not a good guy to be around. And, in the words of Dr. Banner, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. And that's very much the case with Conte. He's liable to say anything. I can imagine for Tottenham, he must be unmanageable. He really must. This is the irony. I think people thought that was going to be the way with Mourinho, but Mourinho was actually pretty good. He didn't really... He wasn't there long enough to kind of get grumpy at Tottenham. He didn't really have many outbursts. I'll always say this about Mourinho. I always felt he was really good with us, the media. I had a good relationship with him. He gave me really interesting answers all the time. I don't think Spurs really had any particular problems with him in that respect. Whereas with Conte, I bet they just don't know what he's going to say next, which might not be a bad thing. I think exactly in his words. I don't think they've experienced someone like me before. But yeah, he's an interesting chap. He's very emotional, which leads to, the unpredictable as well. Before I head off, do a very quick loan roundup. It's a difficult one to do on a Sunday because Ondembele, Lo Celso, Pape Matar, Cameron Carter-Vickers, they're all playing today, so I haven't got anything on them yet. Brian Hill played 90 minutes. Valencia won at Mallorca. Kiana Tete scored another goal for Cheltenham. Their social media guys, you might have seen, put out some little thing about give me a striker from Tottenham or something. I'm not sure that may be what they're chanting there right now. I don't know. It was quite interesting though. He scored again, and he's obviously, it's terrific for him, and he's a player I keep telling you to keep an eye on. But I think his manager, I think it's Michael Duff, is it the manager down there, said it wasn't as complimentary in his kind of post-match thing about Keon. He was very much like, he scored again, and that's great. However, some of his hold-up play wasn't great. The ball was bouncing off him, and he spent too much time arguing with the referee, and that's all stuff for young players. Like 2021, this is all the stuff that he might be 20. These are all the kind of things that he's going to kind of get to experience and learn, but he's going in the right direction. Honestly, keep an eye on Keon Tete. I really would. Troy Parrott got another 90 minutes. NK Don won, I've written down here, beat Bolton. He's getting quite a bit of praise. He's not scoring goals, but getting a lot of praise for what he's doing off the ball as well, and kind of selfless play for others. So keep an eye on Troy Parrott as well. Jack Clark got 78 minutes for Sunderland. They beat Wigan. Niall John hasn't made his Charlton debut yet. Hopefully that will happen soon. He was on the bench yesterday for them. Alfie Whiteman's gone back to Degerfors in Sweden. He's in pre-season there, so he'll only really be playing friendly, so there's not going to be too much to report. I don't think their season starts till maybe April. I think it's a little while. Kappa, I don't know if it's pronounced Casper or Kappa. Kulowitz, he was an unused sub for Pottersbar Town. He's in non-league playing for them. So that's pretty much the lone roundup that you can do. Like I say, those 4 players are going to play today for their various clubs, so keep an eye on them. But yeah, I think that's everything we can probably talk about. I've covered a lot of stuff. It's been a mad week. I was pretty knackered when I got back from Leeds yesterday. At 5:45 start in the morning to get up there for a lunchtime kickoff. And it came at the end of a 3-long journey week. Another one to come on Tuesday. Then obviously home to Everton, which will be a nice bit of a respite, and then back up to Manchester United, isn't it? I think the following weekend with a free week, because it's quite interesting. Someone, I can't remember who it was, but credit to them, put up this really good little spreadsheet thing which showed you every week where Conte's had a full at least 6 days to work with his players on the training pitches with no game in the middle. Spurs, I think they've won all but one, which was a draw. They haven't lost. Whereas the games where he's had to play with only 2 or 3 days and most of that spent in recovery, they've kind of been quite far. That's where the inconsistencies come. So, one thing said about Conte in the past is that, he maybe hasn't done as well in European competition. Perhaps that's what it is. Perhaps he just needs this full week to prepare his team for games. And that's why, when, I think, wasn't it when Chelsea won with him? When they beat Spurs to the title, they didn't have any European competition? I think that was the case, wasn't it? So that's where you get the best Conte, maybe. But again, that's something that he needs to kind of work with and develop as well. I mean, obviously they won the title at Inter Milan. They must have had some form of European football. I cannot remember off the top of my head. They must have been in Europe as well. So he can do it. But yeah, quite interesting to see as the season stretches out a little bit in its final weeks, and he has these full weeks to work with the team, whether we see the benefit of that in the results and the stability of the team. I hope so, because I don't want to start these videos with a big sigh, because I don't like to rant. I don't, even though sometimes it might seem otherwise. But there you go. Right, I'm going to head off now. Enjoy the rest of my Sunday, watch some of the football, and as always, look after yourselves. We've got the press conference tomorrow for Middlesbrough. I think it's a 1 o'clock presser tomorrow, so keep an eye out for stuff from that. And then the matches keep on coming. So yeah, as always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.